All right, so everyone has irrigation and water issues of some sort then, because if you're trying to grow anything at all, then you have to think about water. It's one of the most important things you do have to worry about. You need in your soil, you need soil, air, water. It's right up there at the top of the list. So when we talk about water and irrigation, what we really want to think about is mimicking the natural systems and removing some of the variabilities from it so that we can create more optimal conditions more of the time. When you're going to irrigate, you should think about how nature irrigates as well. You don't necessarily want to have your irrigation running all the time. You don't necessarily want to flood everything all the time. You want more even applications of water. One of the major functions of water is to keep soil life alive and happy and thriving. Once soils dry out, microbes start dying. When microbes die, you lose the availability of minerals, you lose water retention and capacity. You also have microbe die-offs that can create bursts of nitrogen right at a time in the growing season you may not want it. For instance, basically, middle of summer, you forget to water for a week. Your microbes, you have a great booming population of microbes in the soil. They all die off in a couple days. The following week, you'll get some really great lush growth when you start watering again, and you'll often see a pest problem come in because of it. Because you'll have a lot of nitrogen hitting all of a sudden because of all those dead microbe bodies that are being decomposed and feeding your plants. So you can trigger a lot of problems by letting your soil dry out. The same can happen if you have too much water. It's harder to remove water, but paying attention to ways of maintaining adequate drainage, paying attention to your calcium balance in your soil to help keep the soil well flocculated or basically granular so that water can flow through it, drain out when there's too much of it. And also, a related topic would be the microbial populations in the soil, especially fungi. When you break up those populations, you lose the ability for the soil to bring moisture up from below. So every time you till, that's one of the problems with tillage, is you break the fungi networks that help to move water and minerals around your soil. And you can get a situation where your top several inches of soil is bone dry. Underneath that is possibly too much water, and there's no translocation of the water in your soil system. One of the reasons why minimizing tillage is a good idea once you get your soil working well enough that you can do that. Related topic to that would be mulching, keeping your soils covered at all times so that you use less water will be evaporating off of your fields. Basically, when you're thinking about water, you're trying to think about creating the best environment for microbes. The plants are important too, but it's really those microbes in the ground that are what feed your plants. And what they like is even moisture, not wet, not dry, and a cycle. So you should let your ground dry out in between waterings a little bit. You don't want it to be bone dry and dusty, but you do need to let it dry out some. One of the functions of water and rain in soils is as rainwater flows through the soil profile, it pushes CO2 and the gases that are trapped in the soil out. So it basically displaces those gases, and it helps soil to breathe. So that's why it's a very good idea to try to water deeply when you water, so that the water can soak in, push out some of those gases, and then as it dries up again, it pulls air back into the ground. So you can basically soil will exhale trapped CO2 and other gases that are produced. So that, and then when it dries up, it'll bring oxygen. And that's one of the major contributors to fungal root diseases is when the soil doesn't breathe. Often it's caused by too much water, but it can also happen if you're just not irrigating in a way that helps it to breathe. You can create basically a barrier in the soil at the top with where it's smeared over and crusty from basically blowing out your organic matter at the top, not keeping the microbes alive. So let's see, those are the major reasons to irrigate and some of the things to think about. Irrigation's one of those things that if you can't guarantee at least some water in your soil, you might as well not bother doing anything else in your garden. I know a lot of people complain. I've heard a lot of people say, I planted the X crop, I planted carrots, I planted kale, I seeded this or that, and nothing came up. And my first question is always, what did you do to irrigate? How did you water those seeds? If you can't keep your soil moist when you direct seed something, especially really fine seeds that go on the surface of the soil, if you can't keep those moist, think twice about bothering to plant them. You can drop your germination rates down to practically nothing if you let your soil dry out. It doesn't take much. The farms that I've been at that get really good germination every time, they will water in the summertime 2 or 3 times a day if they're direct sowing like lettuce out in the open bed. If you can't keep that kind of soil moisture, then it's really hard to get good germination. Those seeds really cannot dry out at all. Other things, transplants, and as plants get bigger and you get a bigger root system, things are a little bit more forgiving. But those seedlings, tiny little seeds and seedlings you cannot let them dry out. So the ways that you can water range from the time-consuming, simple handheld methods up to relatively complex farm-scale irrigation systems. Those complex farm-scale irrigation systems are now available in garden scale as well. One of the ones that I like, because it's cheap and easy, is drip tape, which is basically just a thin wall plastic tube with emitters every 4, 6, 8, or 12 inches. And you roll it out. Some of the stuff's really cheap and designed for a single season. Some of it will last multiple seasons. All of it lasts better if it's covered with something, mulch for instance. But basically you can run these drip tape out and plug it into anywhere from 4 psi water supply up to 20, depends on the type of drip tape you get, and it'll slowly drip out water into your beds. When you're setting up drip tape, you need to be mindful of things like maximum gallon per hour flow rates and PSI ratings. You might need an adapter if you're on high pressure water system, so you don't blow out all your emitters or blow out the tubing because they have a max PSI number. Each emitter in there has a certain amount of water that they will put out every hour, and so you have to add up all the lines of drip tape you have and all the emitters that might be on your system and figure out what your flow rate is going to be, and if that number is higher than what your water source can provide, you will have to split that system into multiple zones. So it's always a good idea to set up lots of zones anyway, so you can water things individually. But you do have to be careful of that and mindful of it. Also, you'll want different zones if you have fields that are higher or lower, a raised bed versus a lower bed. You probably want to put each one of those different elevation beds in a different zone, because the one at the bottom is going to get a lot more water than the one at the top, generally speaking. The other thing to think about with drip tubing and any kind of irrigation really is the sandier your soil, the closer together your emitters need to be, because the water that's dripping out will, in sandy soil, go basically straight down the soil profile. In a heavier soil, it will spread out more. So if you have really sandy soil, the 4-inch emitter spacing is a pretty good bet, and then really heavy soils you can do with a 12-inch spacing. When I irrigate, I like to irrigate for a long period of time. The exception to that would be transplants and direct seeding, where I will water a very small amount frequently. But I try, as soon as I can, I try to get away from that and water more deeply, because I want to encourage those plants to send roots down and searching for water. Plants never have to go very far to get water and nutrients. Their root systems won't necessarily grow as big as they otherwise would. So you want to, as the plants grow, change your watering practices to encourage the plant roots to expand. And you want to do that as the season progresses, as the plants grow, because if you get to midsummer and you've got a giant tomato plant and you've babied it up to that point, and all of a sudden it needs a ton of minerals, a ton of water to put on fruit, and it's a hot day, you're going to have trouble if you have babied that plant. The root system is tiny. So you can help to encourage that development by with your watering practice. Alternatives to drip tape would be sprinklers and things like that. Soaker hoses, they get water on the foliage, so that's less than ideal, but though they are options.